What's up YouTube, Dale here from ZFR, and today it is episode 9 of the local experience. Now I hope you've been enjoying this series. It's basically a mini series where I've been going through decks I take to locals, showing the preparation beforehand, during and then after to give you a breakdown on everything. So this time I thought it was about time that I took one of my favourite decks to the locals, and this time it is going to be Dark Worlds. So for those of you that don't know, I've just recently updated my Dark World build. It involves the Sandwich Day, not a huge change, but I've kind of brought this back to being Dark World Dangers, and I'm going to take this to my local environment. I've already pretty much gone through the exact list online, on the channel already. So now it's all about getting sleeves to sleeve up the side deck. So this is the one thing that I haven't shown you lot yet. So this will be quite an interesting thing for you all to see. I'm going to need to de-sleeve some cards, but I'll get to that in a minute. So for the side deck, what I've kind of decided to go with, and I'm not fully set on this yet because I am also tempted by, I've got to find space for the Dark World Puppetry. So I quite like the idea of Dark World Puppetry. This just basically allows you to control the graveyard a little bit and trigger off your Dark World cards. So I quite like this, and this is something I definitely want to be playing, especially when you've got Gaze of Timaeus running around. So if your opponent relies on it using the graveyard, this could be a massive, massive component. So that's one that I'm 99% sure is going to go into the side deck. I could very easily put it in the main deck, to be fair, so that's something that might change. Another one is Eradicator. So the ones that might change will be the viruses that I've chosen here. So I've got Deck Devi, I've got Full Force, and I've got Eradicator. Eradicator, in my opinion, is a no-brainer. It's then going to come down to whether it's Deck Devi or whether it's Full Force. Now, Deck Devi is you tribute a Dark Monster with 2,000 or more attack, and then you get to look at your opponent's hand and all monsters they currently control, and then as many as they draw for the next 3 turns, and you destroy all monsters with 1,500 or less attack. Full Force is pretty much the exact same, but it does with 1,500 or less defense. So that's really going to be like environmental specific as to which one it would be of those two. And then the other cards are just generic, normal trap cards. Now again, if my environment is playing Radiance, that's why I've got the Magic Deflector. And the reason I like to play a range of normal trap cards, normal spell cards, and rather than playing 3-ofs, I play 1-ofs, is what you've got to be very, very careful of with Dark Worlds is that they need the monsters. Okay, they need to see a danger. You don't want to be taking out a danger. You could take out a Dark World for certain cards, but you don't want to be taking out useful cards like monsters for more spells and traps, because your spells and traps are going to be less effective. So what I mean by that is I'm already playing 2 Trill Tactics Thrusts. So usually what I'll do, just give you a bit of an insight into the deck as well, is you try to go like for like, and I think this is probably going to be the better way of showing you actually. So I've got Trill Tactics Thrust with all of its targets. Okay, so we've got your trap cards. This one's irrelevant, so ignore that for now. Okay, so the idea is with Trill Tactics Thrust, if I'm going second, I'm putting these in. If I'm going first, I'm putting any of these in. So then what you would adapt in the deck, rather than trying to adapt some of the monsters, and you could lose 1 or 2 monsters, you would adapt certain cards. So like, maybe I don't want the Yugioh because I'm not going to go as aggressive. Maybe I decide to take out the Ceruli because I'm not going to go for the Hamrick because I'm going second, but it's still quite useful to have. Like the first one you'd probably consider to get rid of would be, wherever it may be, I'd probably get rid of Silver. If I know 100% that I'm going first, I'd probably get rid of the Silver. You could afford to drop a Greffa down, but honestly, I wouldn't. You could then sub out the Archives. But the fact of the matter is you're already naturally playing 2 Trill Tactics Thrusts. So the only reason you'd put a 3rd Trill Tactics Thrust in is if you want to guarantee you're going to try and sit, well, not guarantee because nothing's guaranteed, but if you want to be trying to get as much consistency as possible to get to one of these cards. And the idea would be that you would basically trade like for like. So if I'm going second, I minimize my go first cards, and then I've got spaces of 1, 2 here. The other cards that I've got is Lava Golem, and the idea is that I would put Lava Golem in for the Cocky Mirror Guardian. Yes, of course, you could play both, but both aren't really going to help you. Like, they're going to clash massively. So I usually go, right, okay, I'm going second, and my opponent is putting up like a multi-interactional field of monsters. I'm going to need Lava Golem. So like if they're making Dragoon, for example, Lava Golem's going to be so much better. But then if my opponent's ending their field on 1 monster and then 4 set spells and traps, then these are going to be of no use to me whatsoever. So you kind of make sure you use the right approach on that one. So I would go with the free Lava Golem. And then the other card I got is free Sales Band. Now, The reason I go for Salesman is usually if you look at your hand and you're like, okay, this hand is going to get absolutely decimated by a Draw and Lot Bird. Or this hand is so fragile right now that it will get decimated by a single Ash Blossom. Then you'd use Salesman to call that. Now to side the Salesman in is obviously going to need a little bit of, you know, you're going to need to know exactly what your opponent's playing. You're going to need to have a bit of an idea of the strategy. The other benefit of Salesman is, of course, you can activate it and call Dragoon. So it's kind of one of these ones that acts as a second Lava Golem, well, not a second Lava Golem, but like still Kokimiru Guardian without needing to use your normal summon. So that's still something to test and kind of figure out if that's the right approach as of yet. It is a very, very overcautious approach with the way that this works. So what I'll do is I'm not going to show you, I'll show you some demo ideas of what I would take out for particular cards. And then what I'll do as well is once I've done the tournament in the post event, if I remember correctly, I will also try and show you what I actually did side out, side in, and everything else in between. So this should be 15 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 6 trap cards, okay? So that's my full 15. The idea is, like I've said, if I don't have any Radiance out of the environment, I'm probably not going to play Magic Deflector. So I'll probably just take that out, and then that's where Puppetry can come into play. There are other cards in the deck as well that I could consider siding out or just not playing. So like Archives I still quite like. I think it's a good card. Playing 2 a session, again, is still really good because I'm playing the colourless play. But you can take that out if you wanted to. And the idea is you want this deck to be majority monsters and then just power spells that are going to help you go in first and second. So that's kind of why the build is the way that it is. Just check, there's a little bit of a... Yeah, where's that one look? Sleeve's a little bit thicker than the rest. You might be able to see that on camera actually. So that needs to be changed. Yeah, see? It's always weird when that happens. Because it's exactly the same sleeve. It's just a little bit... especially with these art sleeves. And remember, these art sleeves aren't legal for... they're not legal at like... I think it's like tier 2 events and higher. So locals are fine, but then if you take them to like an OTS champion, well, sometimes an OTS championship, sometimes not, but like regionals, everything, you can't use these art sleeves. These are just the sleeves that I've used for Dark Wars for so long, because the way I see it is like that's Snow and that's Grapha. Obviously it's not, but yeah, it just helps me identify exactly where my Dark World cards are. So yeah, that's pretty much it there for the side and the main. I might side out in a session to main deck Puppetry, but that's really going to come down to the environment. Like if the environment is very graveyard heavy, then playing Puppetry wouldn't be that worse of an idea. And the fact that it targets any free cards in the graveyard is actually really important, because then it also means that you can deal with spells and traps. So it's like having a triple DD Crow, and then it also gives you a discard. And then you get to banish it to add it back to the hand. So not add it back to the hand, banish this card from the graveyard, target one of your banished fiend monsters and add that card back to the hand. So let's me re-loot the Genta. So yeah, side deck wise, I'm kind of happy. Extra deck wise, I'm kind of happy as well. Like there's not really a lot I'd want to change here. I do need to get the sleeves correct on all of these, that would be quite helpful. I still like the Underworld Goddess, but the only other one that I'd consider would be the Gorgon. But even then, I don't think that's absolutely necessity. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, the other one that I might change is I might change the Cross Sheep. Like the Cross Sheep just gets a little bit... Like the Cross Sheep is a push for greedy to try and present the field a little bit more. Whereas the Gorgon can be very much defensive. But I don't know yet. I don't know. Still trying to figure that one out. I've got the Magic Deflector here. I'll put that on there right now, but I'll need to remember to cut this back down to 15, or I end up putting one monster from my, put a card from my side deck into my main deck, so I go up to a 41 card, which would be doable, but not that I want to do it. Anyway, that's it for part number 1. I will be back with part number 2, which will be some duels from locals, and then we'll be back with part number 3, which will be like a review of the deck, how it went, and everything else in between. So I'll catch you all in a very short second. Okay, so this is the first duel at locals. We've got Blue Eyes. This is just to kind of show you what happens that I haven't been able to like complete the hand rip on my opponent, but they're going to activate Wishes. We then use the Dark Greffler effect, discarding the silver. Silver's then going to make my opponent put 2 cards back, and that's pretty much all they wrote. We're then going into game 2. This just to show you how making colourless could be very effective. Unfortunately, my opponent had a lot of interactions here. They ultimately ended their turn set 4 plus a True Light. They had Spirit on the field, and then they had a Magnamute. So now we're activating Colourless. I'm just explaining Colourless's effect to destroy all cards they control. And then unfortunately for me, it gets hit with an infinite impermanence. Otherwise, if Colourless goes through here, that's 3k off the back of Colourless, and my opponent is literally just top decking. But yeah, you could use Colourless's effect, but you have to do it preemptively. But then nothing resolves. Like, it's already paid the cost of targeting, so it doesn't really protect much, which is a bit shame. Going into game 3, this is again just a repeat of how it happened in game 1. So they tried to use infinite impermanence. We chain the Greffa Dragon on this one here, again making us use silver, discarding silver via their own effect, and then that makes them have to put 2 cards back, and only they don't have anything. This is duel number 2, so this is against Yugioh, and this is just to show you that I used Dagares to draw 2, discard 1. I discard the Snow, and my opponent hits me with a Skullmeister. Like, of all the hand interactions you could have in the entire game, Skullmeister is probably like the best one you could have possibly had against Snow at me at this time. I then activate Sandwich Day. So this is again just to show you the new card I've added. It was Triple Tactics Thrust that I added off of this, or drew off of this one. So because it doesn't share an attribute of a monster in the grave, I can't do anything. And yeah, then my opponent just kind of like kicked my butt from that point on, because they end up getting... So I use Thrust and get different Dimension Ground to the field, but they ultimately end up going into Yubel, the Loving Defender, forever, and then I just can't get rid of it because it can't be destroyed by Battle or Card Effect. So very short, sweet, simple local. So now we're going to head back to the lab, and I'll give you a breakdown of how it all went. Okay, so we're back from locals. It was a very, very small locals. There was only like 6 players at this one. So it was only 3 rounds, but it was just kind of a nice 3-rounder to kind of get the deck warmed up a little bit. Round 1, I ended up facing Blue Eyes. Round 2, I ended up facing Yubel. And then round 3, I ended up getting a bye. I've only got my entry pack, so we'll open that up at the end of this section here and kind of go from there. Now, I would have already shown you the highlights from the duels. Basically, on recap, the Blue Eyes one... It was a couple of misplays for my opponent. And then obviously the full hand loop, or 90% hand loop, really did put in a lot of work. And then duel number 2 against Yubel, it was just because like time got really, really close. Now, ultimately, it was like I go first, as there's 10 minutes left on the clock, and I got hit with a Skullmeister on the Snow, which would have unlocked my entire hand. So that kind of really hurt. And then they basically were able to super poly into Yubel, the Loving Defender, and lock me down quite a bit. So I wasn't able to destroy it by card effect. The only way I could out it would have been the Underworld Goddess, and I just couldn't get to it in time. So just over a bit of a brief like overview of the deck itself. So we'll go over the one-offs first for the Dark Worlds. So for the one-offs of the Dark Worlds, I was playing 1 silver, 1 cerulean, 1 gold, 1 rainbow. The rainbow, as already mentioned, was only in here purely because of access to colourless, which I made a couple of times, and it's just a nice option to have, but ultimately you can cut it out completely. For the 2 ofs, 2 Greffa. I will find the second Greffa in a second. I've kind of like mixed these all up. I haven't really put these in an order, which is quite bad of me. But so 2 Greffas, 2 is absolutely fine. You wouldn't really want to play any more than that. Well, yeah, you wouldn't want to play any more than that. 3 Snow and 3 Genta. Like, always put a lot of work into this. 3 Rainbow as well as the final pieces for the Dark Worlds. Now, there was times where a third... It was weird, actually, because throughout the entire event, I saw gates in my opening hand. Like, I know it was only a couple of rounds, but I saw gates like 2 or 3 times. And then when that happens, you're kind of like, well, I should just play a third gate. But my issue is, if you see gate with no way of getting a fiend to the graveyard and not having a fiend in the hand, it kind of becomes really dead. So I'm still happy with 2 gates. Like, there's not a big issue with that one. But yeah, pretty standard on that. For the dangers, Nessie, Bigfoot, Mothman, Jackalope, and wherever it may be. So the 3 Nessie, 1 Chupacabra, 1 Jackalope, 2 Mothman, 1 Bigfoot. Bigfoot actually puts in a little bit of work as well, specifically with going second. And that's what I liked about this deck. It was a nice way of saving a bit of time. I was able to go, right, okay, cool. I've got no interactions. Do your combo, do your thing. Let my opponent combo off. Yes, it takes the pressure off them so they don't really misplay when you're giving them that much time. But honestly, there's no point in me sitting there going like, yeah, I've got an interaction when I don't. So you're best to just kind of let them go ham. The Honorary Danger in the form of the Salamander Catalyzer, the 1 Yugioh, and then 3 Koki Mirror Guardian. I have no issues with this. Like, I saw Guardian like twice. Actually, it might have been 3 times. And just normal summon down Guardian really puts a spanner in the works, because then if your opponent's got like Nibiru or anything, it just trades off like for like. And then by the time the Koki Mirror Guardian self-implodes, it does it in the end phase. So you're either going to use it as material during main phase 2, which at the point you're using it as material, you would have already set up, or you should have either hand ripped your opponent so they don't have Nibiru, or set yourself up in a position that you can already react to a Nibiru should they have it. For the spell cards, 1 Archives, 2 Accession, and 2 Gates. There we go, second Accession, 2 Gates. The card that I wish was a Dark World card, but isn't. And then, of course, all of the Triple Tactics thrust targets being the Dark Corridor, Card Destruction, Sandwich Day, Talents, and Mutiny. Sandwich Day was actually quite nice. There was a time where I resolved it, drew a Dark, was able to discard a Dark World. That was really nice. But then there was times where I drew into a Triple Tactics thrust at the worst possible time. I was like, I really need a Dark World here, or I really need a way to discard a card. I went for that, and then I didn't see a monster. I was like, okay, cool, so I don't get to discard a card. But it is what it is. I'll show you the side deck before I show you the extra deck. So for the side deck, I went with 1 Puppetry, 3 Lava Golems, 3 Sales Band, which can technically also act as another Triple Tactics thrust target. But the idea was going second, Raigeki and Dusters, and then going first was Black Goat, Full Force, Deck Devi, Eradicator, and Different Dimension Ground. So the idea behind all of these was that I had, for spell and trap decks, I had for low defense stats, which usually is high attack stat monsters, and I had low attack stats, which is usually cards like a combo heavy deck, like Yummies and everything else. So the rest of the environment was Canine Furhire, there was Blue Eyes, there was Orcusts, there was Yubel, and then there was myself on Dark Worlds. So like I said, very, very small locals on this one. It was Mother's Day, and that might have played a part. And then for the extra deck, Daguerre's I went into, SP that I went into, Typhon that I went into. There's actually a time where I made Typhon, but then completely forgot that I had Gates of the Dark World in the field, so its return effect was negated. We were able to kind of repair that game state anyway. Skulldrift Saruja, Cross Sheep, Akashic, IP, and a Bao Q. Like, all kind of happy with that one. Never went into Baguska, but it's there for a safety net. Buzz King I went into quite a few times. Like, taking away a core piece from my opponent is really important. So in the Yubel matchup, try and take away Loving Defender forever so they don't have a super polymerization target. Or that one is powerful as that card. And then you can also take away Phantom of Yubel as well. Loose, I never went into it because when I saw Mutiny, I would go into Greffa. The one thing that I did learn with this one is that unless I specifically search out the original Rainbow, recycling the Accession, you're only using it for the discard. So I feel that I would quite like the idea of maybe playing 2 Greffa Dragon Overlords regardless. And I feel that there is space in the deck to do that. Especially if I end up cutting the Rainbow because I don't want to play Colorless anymore, and then I'll play a second Greffa. But I still think Colorless is such a fretful monster that a lot of people worry about it. The 1 Underworld Goddess and the 1 Muckraker. Underworld Goddess actually put in a lot of work because it just helps you out those towers and those cards that were really annoying to deal with. And then if your opponent doesn't see it coming, it catches them off guard double the amount. If they do see it coming, there's very little they can do about it because the idea is that before you go into this, you're going to be setting yourself up to a position. What I would have liked the idea of is probably playing the Zalamander, not Zalamander, the Zelantis play. But I think that it's you're either playing Zelantis or you're playing Underworld Goddess, and I quite like the flexibility of the Underworld Goddess, which is why I kind of stuck with that one. So that's it for the entire main deck, extra deck, and side deck. It was fun to play. I don't think it's a deck that I'm completely sold on playing at locals. I'll try and put the Blue Eyes duel up, and maybe the Yubel duel up as well. But it's like, I don't want to hand rip people at locals, because if you hand rip FTK and then hand ripping and just stun lockdown, in my opinion, are just not decks you play at locals. Unless your locals is like super uber competitive. It's like a 6-person locals, you shouldn't really be playing a hand rip deck. You shouldn't, which is why I think I hand ripped once. And even then, it wasn't like a full hand rip during my turn. They used a card against my Greffer, and my Greffer hand ripped them for the final 2 cards. So I did give them a bit of a chance, but it's not something you want to be doing unless it's uber competitive, and then of course you can chance your luck. But like I said, like Skullmeister really cooked me in game number 3 against Yugioh. So if you didn't have Skullmeister, I might have been in a fairly decent position. Anyway, our OTS 30 pack is going to be Rescue Ace Fire Attacker, Assault Mode Activate, and whoa! Wow, that's quite, it's very dark on the camera, very dark on the camera. But this is quite fitting. So this goes straight into the deck with a Super Star Slayer Typhon Sky Crisis. Nice. This actually looks pretty decent as well. It's very dark on the camera. I'm trying to see if I can get like better lighting for it. But you can see it's got like a hatched pattern over the Typhon, which is nice, and it's got some background detail as well. That's pretty cool. I like that. What Typhon have I got in here? Where are you, Typhon? Yeah, so I got my quarter century Typhon. So maybe I'll save that, but this definitely needs a sleeve. Let me grab a sleeve. That's cool. Superstar Slayer Typhon. I still can't remember what other ultis are in this set. I know there is a... it is Tracer Dragon, but I can't remember what the third one is. I don't know why I keep forgetting what the third one is, but at least now there is an Ultimate Rare Typhon and an Ultimate Rare Zeus. That's cool. And then I'm pretty sure we get chibi artworks of Typhon and Zeus as well, which would be really kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to end it off. Small local tournament, end up getting a Typhon. Commons weren't so bad either, really. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions, or by all means, please put in the comments down below. It's definitely a deck that I keep changing around, and we're going to be getting some more cards that have a bit more additional synergy with the deck as well later on in the future. But for now, it's just a deck that I like to dust off every now and then, trial it out, see what I can do with it, and yeah, kind of go from there. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.